Hey, what's up everyone? Mendel here. I hope you're all doing awesome and wonderful. So in this video, I'm gonna do the ultimate comparison. The real amp versus a TONEX capture of that amp versus a Kemper profile of that amp and a Quad Cortex capture of that amp. This is gonna be a complete nerd out fest, so grab a cup of tea or a cup of coffee or whatever's your cup of tea and we're gonna have some fun. All right, let's dive right in. Here we go. Alright, so there's quite some stuff we're going to do in this video. I put like chapters like here and below so you can jump back and go back and forth, whatever you want. But then let's first talk about the setup I had. So the TONEX capture, the Kemper Profile and the Quad Cortex capture are all from the exact same amp, no settings changed, same cables, the whole same setup, same amp settings, same channel, everything exactly the same. Only thing that was changed was the device. So that's that. What I then did, I recorded a couple of DIs. In this project I have like a single DI. But what I did is I reamped this DI to the amp, then through the Kemper, then through the Quad Cortex. And then ultimately, as you can see over here, we have the DI channel and I have the TONEX plugin on there with the capture of that amp. And this capture I made, the 5153 Stealth Blue DI. If you have the TONEX plugin, I made it available for all of you guys so you can check it out and have fun with it. So what will I be doing in this video? So we're gonna compare how close it is to the real amp. Go back and forth between the real amp, TONEX, real amp, Kemper, real amp, Quad Cortex. But we're also gonna do some null testing, flip the polarity, and then really hear the difference between the real amp and the captures or profiles or whatever floats your boat. So all the captures or profiles I have over here are direct amp captures. So basically no cap, just purely the amp that has been captured with the TONEX, with the Kemper and the Quad Cortex. But here I have all the DI amps and they're all routed into this guitar bus where I have an impulse called the Queen's Road number 4. It's coming out soon, check the link in the description box below, and blended it with a thick from this Kali plugin, so that's really cool. So with the colors, the blue one is the real amp, the EV8 Stealth on the blue channel, the red one is TONEX, green one is Kemper, and the purple one is Quad Cortex. All right. Okay, so this is the real amp. And this is the TONEX. Here we have the Kemper. And lastly we have the Quad Cortex. Okay, so all pretty close. Let's focus on those chucks first, and we're gonna do some quick switching. Okay, so that's pretty darn close, like really close. Okay, so now I'm going to switch back and forth with the Kemper. So Kemper is not bad, and I mean it's a device from 2012. But there's again, I said this before last year with a different test, where the low mids are just squashed or compressed, and the upper mids, it sounds weird. Every time when I hear the Kemper, I'm like, okay, yeah, okay, that's the EVH amp. And then I switch back to the EVH amp, and I'm like, okay, there's all that openness and definition of a real amp. I'm curious how big the difference is going to be on the different riffs and the different parts in this project. So now switching back and forth with the Quad Cortex. Now there's one thing I noticed on the Quad Cortex, and I've noticed this especially earlier this year. So around March I had like a lot of amps around here cycling through, and I did like almost 400 Quad Cortex captures. And I noticed the Quad Cortex, it doesn't capture the low end beef of the amp. And I'm really talking about below 50 hertz, believe it or not. I could really feel when I was chugging and switching between the Quad Cortex and the real amp and chugging, that with the real amp there was some low end woof here in the studio. And when I was switching to the Quad Cortex, it was kind of lacking that. And that's something I can hear as well. Okay, let's just for fun, let's check the open chord over here. All pretty close, but to be honest, this was on the active mode of the pickup, so it's a bit more compressed than when I did on the passive mode of my pickup. I'm pretty curious how big the difference will be when we later on do the null testing. That's going to be a real eye-opener, I think. So here's like a bluesy riff. Let's take a listen. The real amp. Okay, and I'll switch between the TONEX and the real amp. It's perhaps weird to say, but I think the TONX sounds less compressed than the real amp, especially with that that note. But that's a marginal difference. Let's check with the Kempers or real amp. Actually closer than I thought it would be, but still something weird in the low mids. Something weird, and it's lacking a bit of that low end oomph. So let's check with the Quad Cortex. Same thing, again the low end thing. To my opinion, so far the TONEX, that's the winner. So let's go to this chord riff. Okay, and now on the TONEX. Man, that's really close. I think on the TONEX, something again with the upper mids. Well, I would say again, but this is the first time where I hear some slight difference. But man, it's so close. And if you see my previous video, I couldn't feel a difference between the TONEX and the real amp. I thought at some points I did, but in the end I think I couldn't feel the difference. So again, let's go back and forth a bit. Let's do just the 2 chords. Okay, also really marginal. I can hear a bit more of a difference between those two now. So let's switch between switch between the real amp and the Kemper. So here I can definitely tell a difference. It's a bit honky, a bit nasally is the right word, I think. Again, it's from 2012, and I wouldn't say it still holds up, but I mean, like live, no one would notice this difference. This is like really nerding out in a Cubase session. So one way, impressed by the Kemper, that kind of still holds up, but again, it doesn't like. So when I listen to this for a while, so I'm used to that. So now when I switch back to the stealth, there's some character of the stealth that's not there on the Kemper. So let's go to the Quad Cortex. Really close, not as close as the TONEX, and still lacking that low end. It almost feels like, so if you're a guitar player, you probably know when your rhythm hand, if you're a metal player or a rock player, if your rhythm hand is really close to the bridge, like the notes, and you do palm mutes, they like really ring out, right? And as closer you get to the bridge pickup, like you further go towards the neck, the tighter it becomes, but also the less definition you get. And it almost feels like that on the real amp, I'm like fully like with my palm on the bridge and like all that tone is there. And on the Quad Cortex, it kind of feels my palm is moving the other way, so there's like less low end. I can really hear the dig of the pickup of my picking hand on the real amp. And that's also present on the TONEX, so that's quite impressive of the TONEX plugin. Really cool. So one thing I always do to check out if how well something or how close something gets to a real amp is play like on the neck pickup on the upper register of the fretboard, and then especially on lower strings like in blues lick or something, and then especially holding those lower, like on the thicker string around the 12th fret, how that sounds and feels. And that's something I always noticed throughout the years on the Kemper that it was lacking versus a real amp. But let's see, so this is the lick. So you can definitely hear the real amp, it handles that lick perfectly like a real amp would. So now we're going to change back and forth with the TONEX. It feels like the TONEX is a bit louder, so I'm just gonna reduce by 1 decibel. Let's just focus and Sizzle. It's so close that I start to prefer the TONEX over the real amp. And no, not even kidding. It almost feels like it's a bit more open than the real amp, which is weird. Okay, so let's compare this lick versus the Kemper and the real amp. So right off the bat, you can hear it's not handling the articulation well of those lower notes. It's like weirdly compressed. There's like a certain depth to the real amp that's not there on the Kemper. Let's just loop the smaller part of the lick. I would say less definition and less depth on the Kemper versus the real amp. Okay, let's do that same part on the Quad Cortex. I think it's super close, super close. The only difference I hear, or the difference that really pops out, is when I do the start of those dual string slides. On the Quad Cortex, it sounds kind of squashed or something. Just that. So on those things, those two. There's like more note separation on the real amp versus Quad Cortex. So now I'm curious on that part versus TONX. I'm just getting crazy with that lick, I'm sorry. But so far, having all of these checked now, of course the real amp sounds the best one. Then for me, spot on is the TONX with some things here and there, but it's so close, it's insane. Then I would say the Quad Cortex, and then underneath is the Kemper. So now let's do some null testing, and I think that will be really revealing. So let's do some null testing. All right, null testing. So if you don't know what the null test is, basically it's where you flip the polarity. So for example, if I would have two identical files, let's say two wave files of a song, and I would flip one over, you would hear nothing because they cancel each other out. So in this case, because I use the exact same DI to reamp through for the TONX and the Kemper and the Quad Cortex, if I flip the polarity and then compare them, the thing you hear, that's the difference between the real amp and the plugin or the device. Which means the more you hear after I flip the phase, which means the bigger the difference is. And the less you hear, which means the smaller the difference is, so the closer it is to the actual source, which is the real amp, of course. So over here, I'm just gonna flip the phase, 180 degrees. And let's first check it with the Kemper. So this is the amp. And now I'm going to turn on the Kemper simultaneously. And that's quite a big difference because I can still hear a lot of things that are the Kemper's doing differently than the real amp. So let's compare it with the Quad Cortex. So as you can hear, that's a smaller difference because there's less stuff you can hear, so it's quite impressive. So again, with the Kemper, this was the Kemper and the Quad Cortex. And now let's do the TONEX. Here we go. Wow. Okay. That's quite impressive. That's quite impressive. Again, Kemper, let's just do those chugs. So Kemper, Cortex, TONEX. So that means the TONEX is ridiculously close to the real thing. So let's try to do the same thing on this blues kind of riff. So Kemper. Quad Cortex. TONEX. Very impressive. Very impressive. That's very cool. And just the fact that TONEX is in plugin format. So as a mixing engineer, if I need to do reamping, that kind of stuff, I can just put it on the DI channel and I'm done. I don't have to physically reamp it through a device anymore. That's so cool. That's so cool. Okay, so here's the chords riff. Okay, it's just the amp. And now the Kemper. Quad Cortex. And TONEX. Very cool. Now I'm very curious about this because this is something, like I said before, instantly can tell, well not instantly, but most time can tell this is where it's a giveaway if it's a real amp or not. So so real amp nulled with a Kemper. Quad Cortex. TONEX. So I think in this test we have a clear winner. Of course, the real amp, that's the best thing. On number 3, the Kemper. On number 2, the Quad Cortex. And definitely on number 1, TONEX. This is, man, I'm just so impressed. And like I said in my previous video, it feels like the real thing. So that's definitely a big a big plus. That's really cool. Basically, you could grab your MacBook or laptop, get your favorite TONEX presets, like hook up an interface or something, and you're good to go, basically. Really cool. All right, and there you have it. Man, this video took a lot of work. So if you like this video, please give me a thumbs up or subscribe and the belly thing. That's much appreciated. Let me know in the comments what you thought. It could even be that you probably thought that even though that the Kemper sounded different, that perhaps the Kemper sounded better. In my opinion, the clear winner of this whole test is the TONEX. And to be honest, this is not a full-on scientific approach. I just did the best I can do to my ability. But for me, the TONEX is the most close to the real amp. But overall, I'm very impressed. Yeah, the TONEX, I'm repeating myself, I know, but the TONEX is the clear winner. And just the ease of use with the TONEX, to have your own amp or a buddy's amp and capture it and have it in plugin format. I mean, how cool is that these days? Isn't that the dream we all had when the Kemper came out, like have it in plugin format? I had, definitely, and especially now that it's better than the Kemper, and difficult to say, but I think it's the TONEX better than the Quad Cortex. Have it in plugin format. I mean, for me as a mixing engineer, it's awesome. I can just reamp with my favorite amps, with my favorite settings, and I'm not even sure if I could hear the difference in the blind test between the real amp and the TONEX. Okay, so I hope you like this video. Again, if you do, give me a thumbs up, subscribe, and that's much appreciated. Hit the belly thing, and see you next time. Cheers.